I'm Matthew Kerbis, the subscription attorney, and this is Law Subscribed, your dedicated source for all things subscriptions and the law. Thank you to my sponsors. See links to them in the show notes. Everything discussed is only for educational and entertainment purposes. Enjoy the show. I'm confirming I could hear myself and that we're live. Thank you very much. I had a tree being cut down today, and so I had contractors at the property, and so I wasn't able to start right on time, but I appreciate everybody who's here that wants to be here live, to ask any live questions. I'll do this for as long as I can. I do have some fun things for us today to do a look back at the show and see where we've been, what's happened. So if you read the post, today is the 100th episode of Law Subscribed, and it's the funny thing about the 100th episode is I've published actually 136 publications. Yes, longtime listeners have seen on occasion and very frequently lately, I published like a half-numbered episode, like 99.5 with Jordan Furlong. The original idea behind the fives was I was having these LinkedIn Lives, other interesting things like being at ABA Tech Show and interviewing folks on the floor. And it didn't really fit into the traditional interview-based format of here's a lawyer or a legal tech expert or a subscription expert that's going to help you ditch the billable hour and become a subscription-based attorney to Law Subscribed. Well, really, it just ended up becoming another way for me to publish more episodes. So I'm trying to figure out from a numbering convention moving forward in 2025 whether or not I'm going to keep that up. The idea being I want to always have a weekly episode, but if I record something that I wasn't planning on, because I schedule these things out months in advance, like sometimes 3 to 4 months in advance, if not even longer if I can. In terms of publication, sometimes it's just easier to slot something in as a midweek release. And since I've already numbered and named the episodes that are in the publication queue, it just makes it easier to do a 0.5. So I might still do that. We'll see what happens for next year, 2025. And yeah, so with that, I have some fun things to go over, just some fun information thanks to Notebook LM. And if you haven't come across Notebook LM yet, I'm sorry and you're welcome, because it is pretty amazing for what some of the things are that you could come up with using Notebook LM. So with that, let's go ahead, let's get started. So I thought it would be fun to ask Notebook LM some interesting questions. And because of technical difficulties, I have to retype in the questions. So the idea with this is, and if you haven't heard of Notebook LM, it's a Google-based GenAI retrieval augmented generation research assistant. It's just notebooklm.google.com. And so what I did is I connected the YouTube videos. And for those of you who may not know, I have been posting the videos of all my podcast episodes, starting with episode 52 on YouTube. But even before that, I've been able to connect the RSS feed so that any audio version of the podcast that goes out, it automatically gets picked up by YouTube's RSS feed and publishes it as a static image on YouTube where you could listen to the episode. And so that happens automatically. So those are the episodes that I've been connecting to Notebook LM. Notebook lets you have 50 sources at a time. And so even though I have 100 mainline episodes, there are 136 publications for the Law Subscribed podcast. So across 3 notebooks, I'm able to ask some interesting questions. Things like, for example, how many times did I have more than one guest at a time on an episode? And it's AI, so it's a little bit finicky. So if you ask it in certain ways, it's going to count me as somebody who was on the show at once. So I had to ask it if there were 3 or more to get some answers. And then I also rephrased it in such a way that said, first identify when the host welcomes more than one person to the show. How many of those episodes are there? And so I was able to get them. So let's do that again here. And so again, I'm going to have to these prompts because things got wiped when I had to redo everything for the LinkedIn Live because I was in the waiting room on LinkedIn for more than 10 minutes. And so it had me reset everything. So bear with me here. I'm gonna type these in. We'll see. So this is the prompt I'm using. So first identify how many people the host welcomes to the show. Then tell me those episode numbers. Okay, so we'll see what Notebook LM has to say for episodes 0 through 40. 46. And I am including the trailer because I really wanted to be able to query against everything. So again, if you have questions, if you want to ask any questions of my back catalog of the last 100 really plus publications for Law Subscribed, put them in the comments here and I'll make sure that I ask Notebook LM of it. So here we go. So it lists all the episodes and it says episode 4 and 8 for the first category had more than one guest. So episode 4 was with Jessica Nars and Lauren Lester. We were talking about a different practice. I have some fun, exciting stuff coming up for 2025 with Lauren and a different practice. And then the second time that ever happened was with episode 18, Benjamin and Abdia. We discussed their prescient publication of The Legal Singularity that was already probably finished being written before Gen AI really truly hit the scene. And then the next time that I had two guests on the podcast wasn't until episode 63.5. That was a special episode I recorded in person at ABA Tech Show. And that was with Kim and Blaine at Fadoo, and that was a fun episode. So that's only 3. That makes 3 episodes where I've interviewed more than one guest at a time. And for the last cohort of episodes, 79 through 100, it doesn't do a good job identifying where I did this, but I know I did this at least once. Here we go, episode 97, Tim Johnson and David Hyams of Longship Legal. So it hasn't happened very often, only 4 times for currently published episodes. I do have one more coming out in 2025 where I also get to interview partners at a firm that are in the process of switching from billing time to subscription and what that has been like so far. So that's an example of some of the fun questions that we could ask of Notebook LM. So again, I am monitoring the chat. So if you have any questions you want me to ask, let's go ahead and do it. Another one I thought would be a fun question to ask of my back catalog is to list all of the technology solutions, let's call them technology tools, that are mentioned in these sources. Do not mention a tool more than once. And so now what we'll have is we'll be able to identify, this would have been painstaking to go back and listen to every single episode, 100 plus hours of content, and figure out what are the tech tools that were mentioned in the podcast. Now I know, shout outs to Matt Stevens of Provider Legal. He told me that, at least he used to, this was over a year ago now, that he would have his people keep track of the tech tools that were mentioned to go try it out. But that's painstaking, right? So here we go. So for episodes, oh wow, it even categorized the tools, and I didn't ask it to do that. So that's nice, Notebook LM. Thank you for doing that. So for the first 46 or so episodes, through episode titled 46, we've got practice management tools that were mentioned: Clio, Leap, ActionStep, Cosmolex, Matters Cloud, App for Legal. I think that might be incorrect. PC Law, Practice Panther. Right now, these aren't necessarily tools. I could have been more specific. I could have said tools that people are actually using to have a subscription-based law practice. That might have been better. It might have been a better prompt, right? Because now it's just listing tools that people use. So certainly they're talking about people used to have used PC Law, and now they're using something else, I hope. For document automation and management tools, DocuSign, Word, PandaDoc, DocJuris, Box.com, Dropbox, Google Drive, Formula, Clerky, 650, Gavel, and Legal Karma. For AI tools that were mentioned in the first 46 episodes, you've got ChatGPT, Bard, rest in peace Bard, now Gemini, Bing AI, which I think they're just calling it Copilot now, even when it's in Bing, Casetext Co-Counsel, BlueJ Legal, and Alexi. For scheduling tools, amazingly, somehow, and of course this is only as reliable as, it's reasonably reliable, I'm sure it's missing some things, but scheduling tools are just Calendly. So here we go, I'm a Calendly connector. Calendly is the only scheduling tool that was mentioned in the first 46 episodes. How about that? For CRMs, we've got Hey Count. Not sure that's going to be accurate. SweetDash, that's true. Simple CRM and Fadoo. Payment solutions that were mentioned in the first 46 episodes: Stripe, LawPay, just GoDaddy's payment processor, Gravity Legal, which of course is now Confidally, and Hey. There's a bunch of other tools that are mentioned, things like LinkedIn, StreamYard, Zoom, Zapier, Jot, Google Workspace, Type, Google Forms, Loom, Afterpattern. There's another company that doesn't exist anymore. Now it's Pattern Builder inside NetDocs, right? So really fascinating to see that in the 3+ years that I've been interviewing folks for the show, that some of these companies don't exist anymore. Some of them have pivoted. Some of them have changed names. Some of them have sold and merged. And so really interesting to see the tech in the first 46 episodes. I'm going to now go to the notebook that is mainline episodes 47 through 78 and see what it comes up with in terms of tech, if there's anything different, right? I'm not going to repeat things here. So we've got Loya, we've got Microsoft Booking. So there you go, some competition for Calendly there. Of course, everyone knows I prefer Calendly. Acuity, HubSpot, Google Appointments are mentioned. I think we must have been discussing newsletter technology. I think this might be pulling from, at this point, I think this is pulling from my episode 52, which is one of my CLEs I've given on the podcast, because it's mentioning all the tech I reference in that episode as far as newsletter technology, right? I, of course, use Substack. That's my preferred publishing platform on that. Trying to see if there's any more tech here that's listed from episodes 47 to 78 that might be interesting and worth highlighting. Zoho, I've seen some interesting things with Zoho and Airtable for what some innovative law firms are doing with Airtable and Zoho, right? It's like a Notion type, like it's you could make a lot, you could do a lot with them. Pretty wide open for what you could do if you're willing to put in the time or hire the right people to do that, right? And we just start to talk more about some Gen AI here in episodes 47 through 78. I also see Vincent AI from VLEX there. I think maybe my episode with Damien took place during that time frame. And then to round it out, episodes 79 through 100, let's see if there's any other interesting tech things that come up. And again, if you want to, if you're interested, go ahead and let me know in the chat if you have any questions that you want me to ask of my back catalog, and I'm happy to do that. I just thought this would be a fun little game for purposes of today's live stream and celebration of 100 episodes. Let's see. Screens AI. So that's an interesting, that I have a lot of, that has tons of potential, and I've been thinking about how to incorporate Screens AI into my practice. And of course, look, it's not perfect Gen AI, right? I asked it just for tech tools, and it gave me the names of some firms or some companies, right? Best Era coming up there, and Galvin Privacy and AI Law. Well, we know that's not actually a technology company, but isn't that fascinating, right? So we've got law firms or legal adjacent firms that are the AI, Notebook LM, has mistaken for a technology tool. And that's the amazing thing when you have a subscription-based law practice, right? You look more like a technology company than you look like a traditional law firm, which is very much needed. So let's see here. Oh, OBS and Riverside, some streaming-related technology. Squadcast is mentioned, which has more or less been sunset at this point for the beta feature rooms inside of Descript. Grammarly, I'm seeing for the first time, FormTool, which has been around for a long time. And I remember when I was originally launching my practice looking at automation tools before Jet was available, obviously. I remember coming across Tool, and so I can't remember which. Well, let me see here. There's citations. So that's from episode 91, and that's Martin Parsons. So Martin was the one who talked about FormTool, and that's fantastic, right? So pros and cons here with the Notebook LM, and how accurate it is with the question that I asked. And now again, I gave a very simple prompt. If I gave a more detailed prompt, it might not have made some of these mistakes. But that's great that just like Perplexity, it gives you citations, it opens it up to the source, and then you could see that information. That's fantastic. Some content creation platforms are also mentioned in terms of tech tools. Thinkific coming up there, and then MyCase, LawPay, Filevine, Zapier, and MateCom. So those are some other tech tools that we haven't mentioned yet that were identified by Notebook LM for technology tools for attorney tech stacks that have innovative practices. If there's any other fun questions that anybody wants me to ask, let me know. Let me know in the comments here while we're live. I'm able to do it while we're live. Otherwise, what we can do is if you leave a comment, if you're watching this later and you leave a comment about something you want me to ask against my back catalog, happy to do that, and then go ahead and post in response here. And really just want to thank everybody for listening, right? I've got tens of thousands of downloads over the last 3 years, a lot of them in the last year. We've really seen incredible growth for listenership. After I moved the podcast to Substack, I've got even more shares of the posts of the Substack emails than I have of podcast downloads. So I hope everybody finds those summaries that I put custom to the Substack subscribers really useful and beneficial enough that they're going to want to share it. I appreciate that. And just thank you to everybody. The show wouldn't be a success without you listening, without you sharing it. The best thing for you to do to support the show is to share it with somebody. If there's an episode that is about a particular practice area, and somebody's in that practice area and they've been talking about how much they can't stand the billable hour and they want some work-life balance, or they want to actually feel like they're helping their clients, or their clients aren't afraid to call them, share that episode with that practice area, with that style of practice, and inspire them to ditch the billable hour and do something innovative with their practice. I have changed, for people who've been around a long time, I've changed the naming convention of the episodes. I used to make it about the guest first so that the guest would share it. We were all figuring this out several years ago about what's the best way to do it. And I just found that naming it like immigration plus subscriptions or fractional GC plus subscriptions was just an easier way to understand what the episode was about at a high level. I know as an avid podcast listener myself, if the episode doesn't convey something that I'm interested in and that I want to listen to, I just mark it as played and I move on. And so not every episode is going to be for every single listener, but I do know that there's always some good nuggets and takeaways, and I want to make it easy for you as a listener to know whether or not this is something that's worth listening to. Some plans for 2025, and I will have a very brief special episode coming out about this too, is it's going to be more focused on content of how to actually have a subscription-based and innovative law practice, right? And so I'm going to have some co-hosts that I'm bringing on, and they may or may not be other legal podcasters, and we're going to just be deep diving and focusing in on one or two particular topics of running a law firm in 2025. And we have the broad description of running a law firm in 2025 because I want people to discover the podcast that might even not be thinking about subscription. Because I think I've tapped into most of the market of attorneys who are interested specifically in subscription-based legal services. And I'm still getting people who are reaching out to me who are searching for that and finding it. Mission accomplished in that regard. Now what I want to do is I want to broaden the types of attorneys that might try to search and find this show. So special series coming out of how to run a law firm in 2025. So very exciting there. Just some other things I'll announce for you, for those who have stuck around, is check out techshow.com for ABA Tech Show in 2025 as well. I don't think we're able to announce yet exactly what our topics are on, but I will be speaking again at ABA Tech Show pending any sudden changes in the schedule or anything. So I'll have a couple of events there that I may be able to speak about even more. So if you like the podcast or if that's interesting to you, make your way out to Chicago in April of 2025 and hope to see you there. Come up and say hello. It's always great to meet listeners of the show. And yeah, so the best way to get in touch if you have any questions or anything is right here on LinkedIn. Follow, connect, message me. And thanks again for listening. Bye, everybody. And that's a wrap. Thanks for tuning in. Make someone's day by sharing this episode with them. The best way to get in touch is to follow and message me on LinkedIn. To get extra content, subscribe to the newsletter at www.lawsubscribe.com, where you can also become a paid subscriber to get episodes and content early. Until next time, this is Matthew Kurbis with Law Subscribed.